ladies. Good afternoon. Nice to see you all. So my name is Martin, and I know many of you are just on the precipice of starting your own businesses, or you've done so recently, from a couple of ladies I've spoken to already. My business is all of 2.5 months old, so it's quite nice to be on that journey as well. I have a lot of empathy and sympathy and respect for all of you for doing it. My background is, I'm a very, very old man now, 39 last week. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the big 39. But yeah, I started off my career, I've always worked in marketing, so I studied that at university. I was working in the sports industry at the beginning for Reebok and for New Balance. Then I went I actually went on a bit of a world tour, so I was outside the UK for around 13 years or so. I went to the Czech Republic, and I came back. Then I was working in Denmark for a few years. Then I was working in Russia for a couple of years, and I came back from Russia, and I was working in Malaysia and Singapore. Then I came back, and then I was working in Croatia for a couple of years. And then finally I just woke up one day and I thought it's time to go home. So I found myself back here in the UK. But I've worked across lots of different brands and lots of different positions. Most recently, so before I started my own business 2.5 months ago, I was working for World Remit, which is a money transfer company many of you may have heard of. Really interesting story there. And also going back to the previous speaker, Mr. Faustina, let's call him, as we're deemed of colour here today. It's interesting to hear about that attitude, because if you know anything about World Remit, my boss was a guy called Dr. Ismail Ahmed. He was from Somaliland, which is a country that doesn't even exist legally. He came here as a migrant. And he then set up this business because after 9/11, a lot of micropayments, remittances home, were closed down by the big banks just because they didn't want the risk of know your customer, someone could be a terrorist or whatever. So a lot of the bigger banks just didn't do it. So for him to send money back to Somaliland, he used to have to get a train into London. There were three or four places he could do wahala and then send it back to Somaliland. Very, very expensive. If you send 100 quid, your family there might get, 70 quid or 68 quid of that 100. So that was his idea, and now that business is worth $550 million, doing fantastic. It's grown a lot, and good respect to him. But before that, I was getting pissed drunk very often, for about 8 years in fact, in Carlsberg. I was marketing director for Southeast Europe. I was also sales and value management director in Eastern Europe and in Asia as well. So there are lots of different things, but they're all commercial focused or marketing focused. So always happy to take any questions, or if afterwards you want to drop me a message on LinkedIn or something, I'll always get back to you if I can. So yeah, these are some of the things I've done over the years, like working on different brands, different sponsorships. Some of them, if you look at some of the brands here, really, really big things and big bands, Depeche Mode, Arsenal Football Club, World Cup, European Championships, different things like this, which was really good fun. But most recently, the last 2 and a bit years, I was working at World Remit, and this photograph at the top was one, and the first photograph that you saw in that presentation was from the Mojave Desert in California. So the first time I ever shot TVC out there in the US, and the one before was from when I was in South Africa in Johannesburg, which is another great experience. So it's really interesting to have an opportunity to work in a company like World Remit, meet loads of different interesting people, and that's actually where I became acquainted with Faustina. Also met people that are not quite as important as Faustina, but I met some president guy called Nana from Ghana. I don't know if you've heard of him. He knows Faustina, sends his regards, and the vice president of Uganda. So you really had on one side, there's a lot of corporate related stuff that you get involved in because you're trying to obviously enter African markets and work with them. But then also going to events and actually being on the ground, working with different people from different communities. I think that's fundamentally what's important here. And really interesting actually, I was having a bit of banter on WhatsApp. I never would have thought I would have said this as a 16-year-old growing up in Somerset, but I have a WhatsApp banter chat with the Miss Ghana UK Foundation, Mavis and Scylla, and they saw, I think on LinkedIn, that I was coming here today, and they said, Martin, finally you've become a sister. So it's really good that I'm here. Although I won't be going through the menopause, I'm really So all I wanted to do, I just wanted to give you a bit of background on me, so then if you do have any, I'm very aware that we're a broad church of people here with different journeys, from different stages of those journeys. And when I spoke to Faustina, I just said to her, what's the best, what do you actually want me to say? How can I add value to such a group of people? So the first ones are just about more setting up a business, because a couple of the ladies I've spoken to today are on that journey or thinking about it, sources of funding from a business perspective. But then the second part of my presentation is more about sponsorship. The two are quite different because one is about how do you actually set up your organisation, and the other one is I have an organisation that's somehow related to getting corporate sponsorships, which is a very different thing. So hopefully within those two parts there might be something for everyone. If not, feel free to throw me out of the room in furious rage. So just one thing that I think could be good advice is there's, I was setting up my business, and so I spent about a year or 6 months planning it. And I think planning and thinking through what you want to do, you're going to throw 100% enthusiasm. And I was looking for simple models, and I think sometimes there's a temptation, and if I may say so, I think actually often with migrant African communities, there is a temptation to go in there with a brilliant amount of passion, but not enough planning. And that's something that I've experienced a lot. And often there's a feeling that somehow marketing models or professional business models are not applicable to you. If you're going to set up a hairdresser, why would you? That's for okay, yeah, IBM would do a business plan, but that's not for me. But actually, it's something that anyone can do at any time. And I found a really, really nice model for myself, my own business. And by the way, this presentation, if you just ask Faustina, I sent it, it's a PowerPoint, so anyone can have it. You just drop her an email or whatever. But there's this thing called the business canvas model. It's a really, really simple model. It's available. If you just type it into Google, you'll find 101 templates and explanations. But it's effectively like a one-page of A3, and you can fill it in yourself. You start with this one, which is your value proposition. So that's basically saying that, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? So, and that could be anything. It could be people are leaving Woolwich railway station and they have to wait half an hour before they get their coffee when they get into Cannon Street or something like that. And you believe your coffee shop is going to solve that problem. Or, I don't know, African women in Reading don't have access to good wigs. It could be obviously something like that. I don't know what it might be, but the point is, thank you very much. People are like, yes, this guy's talking. Yeah, sisters like me know what we're talking about. So there's a value proposition, and ultimately, if there isn't a reason for doing it, then probably that's your first hurdle, isn't it, that you need to overcome. I'm not going to talk through all of these different things, but all I'd say is it's a really nice, simple way. You start with your value proposition in the centre, then you think about your customer segments. So obviously, let's take let's for fun, as I just invented it off the cuff, I'm now going to have to rationalise it, but the African wig shop in Reading, we already got this, but then our segments, well, obviously, there's no point targeting white men in their late 30s like me, but there's going to be, who are your customers, how are you going to talk to them, how are you going to approach them, and so on. And then you start to build out what are the channels, how are you going to, when we say channels, how are you going to reach those people, how do you get out to them? So you were talking before about mentors. This could even be done for a research project. You might then say, I'm going to go to Nigerian Pentecostal churches to then talk about that, for example, this kind of thing. So you can follow through quite a logical thing. On the second page, and I'm not going to talk through this, it's just one I stole off the internet about Amazon. There's loads and loads and loads going from micro business all the way up to big businesses. And I would just say, this is just one model. Any model is just a model for you to follow or not, but it can be quite helpful. And I personally, it forced me to answer, especially when we got to these ones here, revenue streams. When I was thinking about my business, how am I actually going to make money? So I had all these ideas, but then, and in fact I had 3 or 4 other business ideas before I started this one. But when I got here, I got stuck. So it kind of made me be honest with myself and say, I don't know if you're going to monetize that. I don't know if there's a way that you can do it. And then also cost structure. You might suddenly realise that you need to have £20,000 to buy the wigs from Brazil or whatever it might be. Well, then maybe you need to think about your business model if you don't have 20 grand. So maybe there's a different way you need to start building that. So you can have a look at this one if you download it, or you can just Google this kind of stuff. There's also, this is a venture capitalist firm, and I'm not sure if this is their model or if they've just taken it from, it could be from Google or somewhere else, but I just thought it was quite interesting. It's another way to do it, which just demonstrates that there's no fixed way how you want to build a business plan, but this one also starts with what's your company purpose. So is it social orientated? Is it that you want to make a profit? Is it that you want to, what is the vision for your organisation? And what's the problem you're trying to solve? Ultimately, if you're not solving a problem, then you don't really have a proposition to somebody, whatever it might be, whether you're selling bagels or selling an IT infrastructure or HR and recruitment, whatever it might be. So I think there's a few different ways, and I think the only advice I'd give you is whatever you choose, have some process to your approach, and that doesn't mean that you have to spend years doing it. It could just be you on a bit of A3 paper trying to map out some of these things, but fundamentally, if you can't answer those questions yourself, you're probably not going to be able to articulate that to a third party. And then here's just a few links, because I'm a few months ahead, as I mentioned to a couple of ladies in the room. I'm 2.5 months into my own business. I made that decision. It's always, I think, coming off the fence and saying, yeah, I'm going to start it, it's quite terrifying. There's always a reason why you shouldn't. Going back to that fear analogy from our previous speaker. I just wanted to share with you a few of the links I thought could be useful and relevant. One of my observations is there's a huge number of really good, helpful, free points of contact for you and sources of information, but there's also a huge number of people that are trying to be like parasites and take money if you sign up for things and whatever. I would be really careful. There's so much free information you can get, and one is like just a simple blog I found, which I basically followed this to the letter and did everything, how to set up a business in 90 minutes, and it's talking about the legal thing. So literally within about, I didn't do it in 90 minutes, I did it in 4 hours or something, but I then had a legal entity, everything done, and I've got the email from Companies House. You can do these things really fast, and you don't need to pay someone £500 or £1,000. There's lots of these people saying, I'll set your business up for you, I'll do this. You can do it all yourself. It costs £5 on Companies House. It's that quick and that easy. So that's just one. These are all links that could be relevant. There's also really, really nice, the UK government is exceptional, I think. We're living in the 5th biggest economy in the world, and we've got arguably the most advanced service economy in the world as well. And the British government, whether you like or dislike the incumbent government, is irrelevant. The actual state infrastructure does a lot to support people that are trying to build businesses. And it was interesting when I read this that if women set up businesses at the same rate as men, there would be 1 million more entrepreneurs in the United Kingdom. And there's some really nice resources, which again, free at the point of use for this, at the Business in Great Britain website. This was another one that I found interesting. If you want this PowerPoint presentation, if you double click on this, it's actually a 30-page PDF document. So it will go through, and it's about how to start your own social enterprise. It's almost like a mini Bible. And what I found interesting is even if you're not doing a social enterprise, you're doing your own business. I actually read this myself. There was a lot of things, because my business isn't socially minded per se, but there was loads and loads of good bits of advice on how to do certain things. And this was a second resource which I thought was particularly useful, where it's called ProS, and it's also another free to use, free information, lots of things around networking, mentoring, access to credit, different things, focusing specifically on women, so it's quite a good one for people to look at. And it's also across the UK. And this one, I know there's several, I think at least half of the audience are outside of London, but this is a website which is not explicitly for London itself.